All right, it looks like we're ready to go.
Good morning, everyone. This is the teleconference for November 10th, 2022. The Libraries Facilities Financing Authority, LFFA board meeting begins in just a moment and immediately followed by the Library Joint Powers Authority, LJPA board meeting. They will run back to back, and both meetings are being recorded and streamed live to YouTube. I'll now turn the meeting over to Chair Legault.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order of the Santa Cruz Library Facility Financing Authority board meeting. And can we have a roll call, please?
Director Hoffaker.
Here.
Director Palacios.
Here.
Director Goldstein. Absent. Chair Legault.
Here. Thank you. Are there any additional materials for our agenda today?
Chair Legault, there are no additional materials.
Thank you. Any additions or deletions to our agenda?
There are no additions or deletions to the agenda.
Then we will move forward to oral communications. So this is the time of the meeting that any member of the audience may address the board on any matter either on or off the agenda, which is in the purview of the board's jurisdiction. So is there any member of the public this morning who would like to address this board?
Chair Legault, I do not see any public comments.
All right, thank you. We will close oral communication, move on to our library director's report. Director Wilburn.
Thank you, Chair Legault. I have included my library director's report in your packet for your viewing. Just a couple of highlights over the last few months. We're so pleased that we were able to reopen our Scotts Valley Library branch as well as our Live Oak Library branch. The public was thrilled. We had great turnouts at both of our grand opening ceremonies, and we're just thrilled to have service back to those communities. Branciforte Library, we do anticipate it is delayed. We had some issues with glass, the glass manufacturer. We've resolved those by selecting a different vendor. And so that glass is being prepared. We're hoping to get that installed by mid to late December. Unfortunately, with the holidays, that does then push our opening back. So we're anticipating grand reopening of Branciforte Library in March. Once we do get the glass in and everything's set, then our staff have to go in and restock all the books, put in computers, set everything up. So that does take us anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to get that work done. So again, if we can open before March, we're thrilled to be able to do that. But right now we're projecting early March as our grand reopening for Branciforte. And then that leaves in 2023 our Live Oak Annex to open, as well as our Aptos Library. And Aptos Library is coming along. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to drive by, but it just every day there's just more and more of the library going up. It's just really exciting to see. So we're really looking forward to that. And with that, that's the conclusion of my report. I'm happy to take any questions that you or the board might have.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions from board members for Director Wilburn? Okay, let's see if there's any public comment on the director's report. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on the director's report today?
Chair Legault, I do not see any public comment.
Great, thank you. Well, we will close public comment and move on to our next item, which is our consent calendar. Items listed on the consent calendar will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussion on these items prior to the time the board votes on any action unless a member of the public or a member of the board requests specific items to be discussed for separate review. So is there any board member who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar this morning? Is there any member of the public that would like to pull an item from the consent calendar?
Chair Legault, I see no members of the public that would like to pull an item from consent calendar.
All right, thank you. So then I would entertain a motion regarding the consent calendar.
Move approval. Second.
Great, motion by Board Member Huffaker, second by Palacios. And can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Huffaker,
Aye.
Director Palacios,
Yes.
Director Goldstein, still absent, Chair Legault.
Yes. All right, next we'll move on to general business. And it looks like we don't have any general business this morning for the Library Facility Authority. Are there any project updates or comments by board members? Seeing none, our scheduled upcoming meetings, our next meeting will be February 2nd, 2023, and it looks like we're trying to move back into in-person meetings at that time. So we will, is that correct?
Chair Legault, we will continue with Zoom meetings until the end of February. So that first meeting will be via Zoom. It'll be, online. And then after that, we anticipate we'll be back in person, which is that new meeting schedule item.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. Any comments on the scheduled upcoming meetings? Okay, then I think we are ready to adjourn the Library Facility Finance Authority Board and move into our Library Joint Powers Authority Board meeting. Let me pull up that second agenda. All right, we'll go ahead and call to order the Santa Cruz City County Libraries Joint Power Authorities Board regular meeting. And can we have a roll call, please?
Director Huffaker,
Here.
Director Palacios,
Here.
Director Goldstein, absent, Chair Legault.
Here. Thank you. Are there any additional materials for this agenda?
Chair Legault, there are no additional materials.
Thank you. Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
There are no additions or deletions to the agenda.
All right, so we'll move into oral communications. This is the time of the meeting where any member of the audience may address the board on a matter either on or off the agenda that's within this board's purview. So is there any member of the public that would like to provide general public comment this morning to the JPA board?
Chair Legault, I do not see any public comment.
Thank you. We'll close public comment and move into our report by Library Director Wilburn.
Thank you, Chair Legault. I've included my report in your packet for your review. A couple of highlights that I would like to mention. As you know, we've just had our elections, and so we are still awaiting the final vote count with regard to Measure O. So at this time, we don't have additional information included with regard to that. We want to make sure we get the final tally count before we put anything in our reports. I do want to highlight that we continue to hire. We have a number of vacancies and we are filling those, but it is, as you know, as many of you may be experiencing, a slow process. So that continues. I already talked a little bit about our facilities that have opened, but just one highlight. Last week, we did have Senator Laird visit our Scotts Valley Library branch. And I know that Library Advisory Commission Chair Lindsay Bass will be speaking later, and she might want to highlight because she happened to be there on that day for another meeting using our community room. So we're just really excited, again, about reopening our libraries. We also held our all-staff meeting at the Scotts Valley Library. And it was really, I think, an overwhelming success. It was wonderful, I have to say, for our team to be able to get together in one place. We had some really great non-escalation training happening with Vistalair. And so we want to continue to do that in 2023 and build on the skills that we learned at that training. So with that, that's the conclusion of my report. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Director Wilburn. Are there any questions from board members? All right, are there any questions or comments from the public on Director Wilburn's report?
Chair Legault, I see no public comments on the director report.
Thank you. All right, well, we will move on to our next item, which is our report by the Friends of the Santa Cruz Public Libraries. And I see Bruce is here, and it's great to see you, Bruce, and looking forward to your update.
Good to see you, Chair Legault, members of the board. Thank you for having me. Over the past couple of months, we have been working on our budget for the coming year. I want to thank Yolanda and Eric for putting together a 2-year budget for us to with some kind of improved visibility into the future. The requests for the next 2 years are considerably higher than they have been for the last couple of years, and so we are working on the other side of the ledger to make sure that we're able to accommodate that. I'm sure that we will be. Our primary fundraising campaign theme in the coming year is Recover and Thrive. Most of you will have seen the ongoing reports about the impact on K through 12 students of the pandemic, on learning and also on socialization. Our students need library materials. They need safe and flexible places to use them regardless of race, culture, language, ability to pay, access to the internet. So the goal of our program fundraising for the coming year will be to help offer meaningful activities during the second half of the 2022-23 school year, and to help expand the very successful summer reading program into a more robust summer learning program, so as to position those kids for excellence in the 2023-24 school year. We are cautiously optimistic about the Downtown Library Affordable Housing Project. As Director Wilburn said, we're waiting for the final numbers. I will say that we recognize that we have some substantial work to do with the supporters of the measure. I have had an opportunity to speak with many of them over the last few months in person and email and phone. I know how much they love the libraries, even though their vision of the libraries has been different from what our vision was. And so, you know, we look forward to reaching out to them and working to bring us all back together so we can all work for the benefit of the library system. We will, I am hopeful, be putting together a capital campaign for the Downtown Library Affordable Housing Project, but I suspect it'll be a few months before we launch that. I think that people need a little time to get over the last few months and some of the conflict that's been around. And so once the path forward has been a little bit clearer, we'll be coming back with a report to you on that. And once we know with a little more certainty what the library is looking for from us. And finally, I'd just like to express our appreciation to 2 outgoing members of our board of directors, Jill Mitch, who is leaving us after a term, and Laura Albrecht. Both have been great members of the team. They've both been very hardworking and creative people. I am happy to say that I understand that Laura is moving from my team to Yolanda's team, which I think is great. She's a remarkable young woman, would be a great add to your staff there. And that's the nature of my report today, unless anybody has any specific questions for me.
Thank you, Bruce. Are there any questions from board members? And are there any public comments on the report by the Friends of the Santa Cruz Public Library?
Does look like there is one comment. Judy Gunstra writes, agenda item 6, sad to see $10,000 going to a political issue. And
Okay, thank you.
that appears as though it
comment.
ends public comment.
All right, if there's no other public comments, before we move on to our Library Advisory Commission, just two notes. We did have a comment pop into the Q&A, which for those watching the recording who may not have access to that, I'll just read out the question and the response for the record. So consent item 8H, page 51, second paragraph reads 2022-22. Is that correct or a typo? And the answer is it's a typo. It should say 2021-22. And I'll also announce that Director Goldstein has joined us at this point moving forward in the meeting as well. So thank you for being here, Director Goldstein. So next on our agenda is a report by the Library Advisory Commission, and I see that Lindsay Bass is here for that report.
Good morning, board members. The Library Advisory Commission did not have a quorum for its September meeting, and it was therefore canceled. However, Assistant Director Howard did request in the interim that the commission convene its subcommittee on strategic planning to inform the work that you will be hearing more about today. That committee consists of Commissioners Nguyen, Ripma, and Vice Chair Dubin. That's a powerhouse of great thinking and experience on library topics. So they did meet with Assistant Director Howard via Zoom on October 19th to provide their input. The full commission will be meeting this Monday, November 14th, also via Zoom teleconference. We have strategic planning and the Sensource people counting statistics on the agenda. The commission will be sure to consider this body's comments today on those topics as appropriate in our discussions next week. Aside from that, I did just want to note that I was able to take advantage of the new Scotts Valley Community Room via another function, and just want to express what a wonderful facility that is. It really was conducive to the type of discussions and team building that our group was doing. We were able to take full advantage of the beautiful outdoor deck and recognize all of the incredible support that is noted and honored either in the deck tiles or the artistic leaves along the fence line. So just we're really impressed and surrounded by that community support. And I think we're blown away by the impact that that's had in creating so a wonderful resource for people to utilize. We happened to be there on the same day that Senator Laird was there to tour the facility and also read a book to school children. So he gave us a report out on what happened between the bear and the jar of pickles. So it seemed like that was a very sweet event, and really we're very thankful to be able to utilize that facility. Looking forward to exploring all the great additions to Live Oak as well. So this concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions and appreciate the time on the agenda today.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Are there any questions regarding the Library Advisory Commission report? Board members, are there any public comments?
Chair Legault, I see no public comments.
Okay, thank you. Then we will move on to the consent calendar. All items listed in the consent calendar will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussion on these items prior to the time the board votes on the action unless members of the public or members of the board request specific items to be discussed for separate review. Are there any board members wishing to pull an item from the consent calendar? Seeing none, are there any members of the public requesting an item be pulled from the consent calendar?
Chair Legault, I see no indication there are members of the public looking to pull anything from the consent calendar.
All right, thank you. So with that, I would entertain a motion regarding the consent calendar.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Director Huffaker, second by Director Goldstein. And can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Goldstein, Director Goldstein,
Aye.
Director Hoffaker,
Aye.
Director Palacios,
Yes.
Chair Legault.
Yes. All right, motion approved unanimously, and we will move on to our general business. So our first item under general business is the library closure schedule for calendar year 2022 remaining and 2023.
Thank you, Chair Legault. This is a library closure schedule. In the past, we've typically alerted the board, and you'll see that the 2023 follows this first page of the item, letting you know what the days are that we're projecting the library would be closed next year due to holidays, our all staff closure days, and other items that come up. We've got like the Martin Luther King holiday, and Juneteenth was recently added. So we've included that as a full list of closures for the year in the 2023 schedule, so that the public could be alerted. It will be posted. In the past, I think they may have come to the board a couple of times during the year with changes to this. We anticipate that we don't want to make any of those changes. The policy is being removed, eliminating policy 108, because there was a library closure policy, but each year we come to the board and give these dates anyway. So I just didn't see the need for a policy on this because we are coming to the board and requesting that these are the closure days. As you will see, based on this year, because the holiday falls on the weekend, it is a little tricky. And so with our MOUs, based on kind of what we've done in the past, Saturday, December 24th, which is Christmas Eve, we anticipate that our branches will open at 10 a.m. and they would close at 2 p.m. And then on Sunday, they would be closed. We do only have the Capitola and downtown branches that are open on Sundays. But on Monday is when the holiday would be observed for the majority of our staff, and therefore we would need to close on the Mondays. So happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Director Wilburn. Are there any questions from board members regarding the proposed schedule? All right, are there any public comments on this item?
Chair Legault, I see no public comments.
Okay, so we'll close public comment, and there's any other discussion by the board, or would look for a motion to approve the schedule as proposed.
I'll move approval of this schedule.
Second.
Motion by Director Palacios and second by Huffaker. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Goldstein,
Aye.
Director Hoffaker,
Yes.
Director Palacios,
Yes.
Chair Legault.
Yes. All right, motion passes unanimously, and we will move on to the annual meeting schedule for 2023 for this board.
Thank you, Chair Legault. This is an item recommending that the board adopt the annual meeting schedule. This schedule is consistent with the schedule that was approved with the LFFA meeting earlier today. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments by board members on the proposed schedule? Any member of the public wish to comment on the proposed schedule for this board for next year?
Chair Legault, I see no public comment.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion regarding the annual meeting schedule for 2023.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Director Palacios, second by Huffaker, and a roll call vote, please.
Director Goldstein,
Aye.
Director Hoffaker,
Aye.
Director Palacios,
Yes.
Chair Legault.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. And then we're now on item C, which is a presentation by Eric Howard regarding the strategic plan update.
Thank you and good morning, board members. I'm very excited to be here. This has been a long time coming. I'm going to share my screen here, or attempt to. Okay, so what I'm going to attempt to do here is we're not going to go through every piece of the strategic plan, but instead I really want to walk you through the basic lens that we're using, and also to discuss the architecture of this. And I thought it would be easier to demonstrate the architecture and the lens by showing you what isn't yet public. It's behind a wall right now, but it is the online version of the strategic plan, which you have a paper copy of. And I think this will allow us to see things in somewhat of a different lens. But I want to start off by saying that where it reads that this is the culmination of year-long work is not entirely accurate. First, the plan for the plan was delayed by about a year because of the pandemic, and the board here wisely saw that it was necessary to delay it when we were in the midst of the pandemic and there was so much uncertainty in the world. That also affected the final lens of this strategic plan, which is to say it's intended to be an adaptive plan. If there's been any lesson we've learned over the past 3 years, it's that we need to remain very adaptive and ready for change. This work involved many, many voices, both within the library, but also throughout the community, and also through all of our jurisdictions. It began with an internal team that was both one separate team that was focused on diversity, equity, inclusion needs. And then there was a separate team that was thinking through our planning for the strategic plan. And those were both internal. And so I'm going to start with what was the culmination of that work. Essentially, we are breaking this plan into 3 different chapters. The first chapter is the work of our internal team, which focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI. We've also recently been working with a consultant who has been volunteering her time, Felton resident, Kelsey Jew, we've been very appreciative of her help with our final edits of this plan, and it's still in draft form. And I probably should also back up, as Lindsay noted, we came back to the subcommittee with the Library Advisory Commission and reviewed a previous draft of this, and they gave us some really good suggestions, which we incorporated. They raised some concerns that perhaps we weren't doing enough to identify specifically in this plan our strategies for going out and connecting with non-traditional library users and bringing them into the library. And they also asked that we think about how we can leverage our new program rooms to do that. They also wanted more specific tools for identifying how well our various services are providing the needs of our patrons, specifically when it comes to things like holds and all the different things that we do to get materials into people's hands. And so we've incorporated that and tried to call very specific attention to those areas that the LAC brought to our attention. And then that was a very brief history, and just thinking about the future, we will be taking your input today, sharing that with the Library Advisory Commission on Monday, with a similar presentation that I'll give to them on Monday. And then we'll come back to all of you in February with what changes we may have made between now and February for a final vote. And then once we do that, then this online version will become public, and we'll show it to everybody. So the first page.
Assistant Director Howard, I just want to interrupt here as well to make sure that I wanted to make sure that the board and our public know that we also will take this back out to our staff. Our staff have been involved in this process throughout. And so making sure we get good feedback from our staff is an important piece of that too, before we bring it back to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an excellent point. And we did review this at our in-service day as well, and we'll continue. And that is part of the core of this plan, is to continually go out both to the community and our staff and listen to their input on this and incorporate it. The introduction page covers the history, but it also covers something that we established early on, where we wanted to be intentional so that we were not missing specific groups within our community. So we created a list that we used, and we collected information both through surveys, but also through what we called community conversations, where we had trained staff who could mediate those conversations. And then we also had community forums as well. And then as I mentioned, we also worked with our staff back in 2021. We worked with a consultant. She's the former, Jane Light is the former library director for the San Jose Public Library, where we conducted a SOARS exercise, which is strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. And then, as I mentioned, we went back after that and had a community partner dialogue with the following groups listed here. So over the next 3 years, and this will be a 3-year plan, there's a lot in here, but the first year is going to be focusing on staff well-being, diversity, equity, inclusion, along with a number of benchmarks that we've put into the plan for year 1. But that's just the general theme, and there's a lot under that. Year 2 is we're going to be focusing on measuring impacts, and then year 3 we're going to focus on lessons learned over this past 3 years and how we're going to continue to adapt. And this is again the core. I think one of the major lessons we've learned over the past 3 years is to adapt. And so each of the strategies that are in this plan go through this process of identifying the needs, collaborating solutions, implementation, analysis and revisions, and then integration again. So as I mentioned, there are these 3 main chapters to the plan. And then you'll be able, once this is public, you'll be able to see them over here and you can navigate them. And then we have under those 3 chapters, the goals for each one of them. So the main goal and the central goal for DEI for the library is to ensure the Santa Cruz Public Libraries creates an organizational culture of equity and inclusion, providing equitable and relevant services to all. And underneath, we have the strategies in terms of how we're going to get there. And I won't take you through all of this, but I did want to just demonstrate, and this was, I want to thank Nicole Coburn. She and I met. She helped spearhead the county's strategic planning process. And her recommendation was to take our work plan and then incorporate it directly into the strategic plan. And the work plan becomes the objectives. So you can open up the objectives and then you'll see how we intend very specifically to ensure this goal is successful. And then I want to take you to one other piece here. So that covers, and there's an extensive DEI plan that supports this that we created as well. This is the second chapter, and this is when we went out to the community and sought what they want from their library. And these are the 3 goals that we got from the community. The first one is the library creates and supports safe and friendly places. The library fosters an inclusive community. The library nurtures a community that supports all members of society. So when you can go into each of these goals, you can see the strategies in terms of how we intend to do it. And then you can go into the objectives, which is the work plan, to support those strategies and goals. And then we can learn whether or not we're succeeding in reaching these goals. The third chapter is the result of the work that we did that we did internally, both in the in-service day and since then. And there are 6 goals within our organizational needs. And I'll just read those quickly for you. And then I want to show you how we intend to support all of the work within the strategic plan. So the library will measure how it has created change in the community and will continually adjust the library's work to meet its goals. This is really fundamental to this whole plan. And it's a little bit of a departure, or some may say a significant departure, from the way we've done work before. And that's because traditionally in libraries, they often count things. They count how many items are circulated. They count how many patrons come into the building, how many participate in the programs. But what we intend to do over the next 3 years is to look at our goals that our community gave us and the goals that we have from our staff and really measure outcomes. Have we really affected a more welcoming environment? Have we created a more inclusive environment? So all of our goals will be supported by measuring those outcomes. And as you can see, we have as our strategy, the library will develop a new and transparent assessment that evaluates the effectiveness of the library's work to address the community's goals, the library's equity plan, and the library's strategic directions for collections, technology, learning, and staff training. And the library aims to provide a system that identifies outcomes and new metrics for measuring the library's success at meeting them. And so how do we intend to do that? We're going to do it through a number of different ways. We're bringing on new software for our evaluations and for onboarding staff. We will also be developing new measurement tools for customer service. And I should mention too that some of these objectives and goals were a little bit behind and we're a little bit ahead. And that's in part because this has been a long process. We knew the general strategic direction that we wanted to go in, but we also haven't had approval from the board yet and won't until February. So some of these things we're ahead of, and here I'll mention some of the things that we're actually we should be ahead of, or will be soon. We will be bringing on it says recruit a consultant to support staff in measuring the library's impact on services and programs. We have recruited a group that consults with ALA, with the American Library Association, and we'll be doing a training in January, starting in January, and then throughout the spring with staff so that they can wear this new lens and think about how we can measure impacts and the outcomes of our services. So these are the other 5 goals that we have internally, or we created internally with our staff. The library will curate a relevant and engaging collection of materials, diverse in content and format, to satisfy the current and anticipated reading, listening, viewing, and learning preferences of the community. The library will continue to develop cutting-edge technology for the community and bridge the digital divide for all community members in Santa Cruz. The library will continue to strengthen and support learning. The library will, and as an example, I want to show you again how we have it designed, where we have the strategies and then the objectives, which is our work plan, and how we intend to do this. And a lot of this, it's a kind of a conversation with all 3 chapters. So a lot of the internal goals are talking back with our equity plan, our DEI plan, and they're also speaking to the community goals as well.
And I will just add in here that we are working on collaborations with community organizations. As an example, with regard to the item that Assistant Director Howard just pulled up, we have already begun to reach out to the schools in our area to talk about piloting a program where we could work with 3rd grade students to sort of track them over time, really have our librarians go in and work with those students, whether it's after school programs or over the summer, so that we can then determine, are the summer reading programs, or as Bruce mentioned, are these new summer learning programs that we're providing to our community yielding the outcomes that we'd like to see, resulting in improved reading and mathematic levels for our students. And so that's something where when we talk about really measuring the outcomes of what we do, we are really working with our community partners to ensure that we can get that information.
Thank you. And I think that's also a really perfect example of how all three chapters are talking to one another in this. It's something that we saw in our community conversations. It's something we certainly saw internally, and it's a very significant part of our DEI plan as well. In order to achieve all of this, goal number 5 is also very critical. The library will support and prepare staff to successfully meet the needs within this plan and to ensure excellent customer service. And so we have the strategies here to try to achieve that, and then the measurable pieces. And one thing I skipped over rather quickly was in that measurement piece, what we intend to do is take these objectives that we have and build out a dashboard so that the public can see how well we're meeting these objectives. And it'll take us about at least a year to develop that from where we are right now. But that will be linked and it'll feed into the dashboard along with other data that we collect from the library. And then our sixth and last goal is the library will enhance community outcomes by effectively aligning its work with the work of its partners in government. And we know we can succeed so much more if we're in alignment and working to do that. And so these are the strategies that we have for it, and then our objectives. As I mentioned, you have both the strategic plan and the work plan in your packet. The work plan in this version is are the objectives, and then in a year we'll have a dashboard developed so that everyone can check in and see where we are with the plan. And that's the conclusion of my presentation. I'm happy to take your questions now.
Great, thank you so much, Assistant Director Howard. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Director Palacios.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I just want to thank you for your work on this. I'm very pleased with the report. I think it's very impressive. So thank you very much for the overall quality. I think is really good. I had a couple of questions. One is in terms of the development of the plan and the outreach you made to specific groups that are not necessarily traditional users of the library. I would like to know more detail about how you outreached to, for example, the Spanish-speaking community. What were the specific things that you did, and who did you work with to do that?
That's a great question, and it's something that we have to continue to build on. But we have a list of partners that we currently work with, and we can certainly provide those to you. We reached out to those. We started with our current partners, and then we went from there and asked them what partners they work with. And it's also built into our DEI plan to continue to do that. And to do it on a regular basis, and then to provide you with reports on the progress of that.
And I will add to that, Director Palacios, that we really looked at a lot of the data that was collected. So the Applied Survey Research provided data. They had done surveys for us. We also reached out to United Way. And they helped us. They provided us with some data that they had collected with regard to sort of underserved populations. We recognize, and that is why, if you notice, DEI is at the forefront of this plan, because we recognize that we have missed those demographics significantly when we've begun planning and providing services. And that is a part of this plan to ensure that we are reaching out to those communities. to really determine what the needs are. It's not just about, we counted that someone came into our library. It's about what were the outcomes, right? Did we provide the educational experiences that they needed? Did they benefit from the services that we provide? And so that's really why DEI is at the forefront of this plan, because we recognize, and in looking at the data, and I've talked to other community partners as well who are trying to do this work, that has not been an easy target audience to really pin down and get good data from. We have very limited data, and that's where we want to make sure we improve that and what that process looks like.
So that all sounds good. Thank you for that. What I would encourage you to do is to work with some of the nonprofit groups who work specifically with these communities. We may need to contract with them, right? Because they're under budget pressure themselves, and they don't just have a lot of extra money to go do, our work for us, but they would be willing, and we have worked with them in the past. I know that both in Watsonville, when Matt was there, they did a lot of this, and I certainly have done it in the county as well, where we would contract, for example, with Community Action Board, Pajaro Valley Unified School District, Pajaro Valley Prevention Student Assistance. You mentioned United Way. There's lots of different groups. Barrios Unidos is another one. We actually contract with them to help develop people who would participate in focus groups that we could bring together and get their input. The focus groups that we would bring together, we would provide dinner, we would provide childcare, sometimes transportation. At times, we've even used a stipend to recognizing that people are having to take off of work or sacrifice their work. So we've done all of those things, working with nonprofit partners who then get a very representative focus group that we can meet with, 2 or 3 times. Maybe it's just once, maybe it's ongoing. But because you're providing the childcare, and of course we not necessarily providing the childcare, you would contract with someone to do that. Would contract with somebody to provide the dinner, because those are the real, as you folks are aware, those are the real obstacles to getting working families from lower represented groups to participate in this thing. They have to figure out, how am I going to make dinner for my family? How am I going to get there? Who's going to watch my kids while I'm participating in this? So it's really, it is a big effort. It is a very big effort. But I for one would be very supportive in using part of our dollars to invest in this kind of outreach, because I think that's what it really takes to get this kind of very focused outreach to these kind of communities that are not normally participating in these kind of events. And at the county, we're looking at it in terms of not only outreach about affordable housing, because we recognize that those groups aren't participating in those discussions, but also in terms of our other health initiatives as well. So in any event, I would really encourage you, and I think some of our staff have gotten very good at it. We'd happy to work with you in that. In terms of one of the objectives, so I think the strategies are very important, of course, the overarching strategies, and then you break them down and you get down to objectives, which is really great. But then, that even objectives is still at a fairly high level in this plan, which is fine. That's probably appropriate. But in terms of what actually we're doing, right? That's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And that kind of specific work plan is where I would eventually like to be able to look at, because I would like to be able to see exactly what you're doing, right? For example, in hiring and trying to increase the diversity of our hiring, I would hope that along with the rest of us, we're changing the way that we're doing hiring, in that we're really outreaching again to groups that aren't typically aware of these kind of jobs. So we're doing pop-up events at schools, high schools, at the Cabrillo, at farmers markets, at the flea market, things like that. We're going to do pop-up events because, again, there's this whole population. I like to, living in Watsonville and having been here for the last 30 years, there's really a parallel universe of people that just do not interact with each other. And, a lot of those folks who are at the flea market, at the farmers market in Watsonville and other areas in the Valley as well, just are not interacting with us in terms of our jobs. They don't even know these jobs exist. So I'm hoping that that's the kind of specificity we don't necessarily need it in the overall strategic plan, but I hope at some point be able to look in your objective specifically, what are you doing to outreach and hiring? Are you doing a pop-up event at a farmer's market, at a high school? Are we doing a very robust internship program? That's the other thing, right? The library director that board member Huffaker promoted, Alicia Martinez, I think her name, is that right, Matt? Martinez, Alicia. She's a good example of that, where she literally started as a library page or whatever. And we actually, she was part-time. We encouraged her to go to school. She got a bachelor's degree. We encouraged her, helped get a library science degree, and now she's the director, right? And I guess that I shouldn't talk about my age, but I'm literally remember when she started as a high school intern. That shows you how old I am. But it's funny seeing her as the director. And of course, that's what we're all going to have to do in all of our jobs. We're really going to have to really encourage people from within to grow into these positions. So I would hope to see that kind of specificity when you get down to your, I know the objectives are still at a fairly high level, and that's totally appropriate, but at some point it has to be a work plan for somebody. And that's the kind of thing that eventually I'd like to see, because I would like to look at what specifically are you doing specific, to do these, for example, the hiring and diversifying our hiring. And is it the pop-up events? Is it the internship program? That kind of thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, those were all excellent points, and we really appreciate them. There is in the DEI plan, to your point about stipends, it does specifically call out having stipends for doing these focus groups. But I think contracting with the different nonprofits to help us do that is an excellent idea, and that's something that we can add. And that's you're also 100% right with the objectives, and that's of course part of the adaptive piece of it. And I can say that Director Wilburn from day one, when she came in, said that we need to be doing outreach for hiring and need to be going to places that we don't traditionally go to. So we definitely are building that in, and we'll continue to build that into the program.
All right, Director Goldstein.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Eric. It's an exciting plan. I have kind of more of a comment than a question, I guess, about the sort of the philosophical approach of really trying to measure outcomes. It's certainly one that I appreciate. And I think that there's a lot of value in an organization acknowledging that the process of sort of adapting to change and refining programs and efforts over time is very important. I also know that there can be pitfalls in that approach, is that you can at times just sort of just run around chasing data all the time, both in terms of like people, sort of training to the test, right? Or people just, feeling like they're spending all of their time setting up the data, trying to collect the data rather than doing their job. So, I understand that tension. I just kind of want to make note of it. And also, I'm not saying I don't want to use metrics. I do. I think that that's a really important thing to bring to the library. I just think always kind of balancing sort of the utility of it. How much is it taking to get it? How much is it actually telling us? And then at the same time, kind of looking out for the training to the test sort of notion. So that's all I have. Thank everyone for all their efforts on this.
Thank you.
Director Huffaker.
Yeah, thanks for the great presentation, Eric. I know there's been months and months of work that's led to the final plan. And I don't want to repeat some of the comments that Carlos and Jimmy already made. I'll just say that I just really appreciate the way in which and the intentionality around weaving both diversity and inclusion throughout all of the goals here, and also taking a direct look at our staff values. And some of the points that Carlos had made, I agree with, which is, continuing to make sure we're being intentional around growing and expanding diversity amongst our staff, and providing those opportunities for career growth within the ranks. And as Carlos had pointed out, many of the barriers that are limiting access to our services and programs are the same barriers I think we need to overcome as we're engaging with members of the community that are perhaps just for one reason or another not able to access our services. So I really agree with the comments around working with folks like Community Bridges and Community Action Board and the school districts to continue furthering that work. I think it's great that we're taking a really strong data-informed approach with the plan as a whole. And at the same time, having those opportunities for direct engagement with our community members as we move through implementing the plan. So outside of that, just really appreciate the work and collective efforts around it.
Thank you very much.
And I'll just add a couple of comments. I agree that collaboration is key, and both to access future users of the library or ensure more members of the community are aware of what's available through the library, and also through supporting this community effort around increasing awareness and helping out all members of our community feel included and welcome. And as an example of that, the Scotts Valley Unified School District and the City of Scotts Valley are collaborating on a multicultural event next spring, and would welcome the library's participation as a partner in that as well, because I think those are sort of those opportunities for synergy where we as government leaders can come together and collaborate on those types of events. And I think the conversation around data is also very, very interesting to me. I agree that having those high level objectives and then figuring out how you're going to get to the actual items that you're going to check off the list, and then how are you going to measure the outcomes associated with those items. And I'm glad to see that you're going to take the time over the next year plus to develop that dashboard, to really be thoughtful about what metrics are meaningful and not just chasing data. Because I think it was Assistant Director Howard pointed out, it's easy to measure how many people walk in or how many books are checked out, but does that really lead to the outcomes that are in this plan, which are harder to measure? And so I think that is worth the thoughtful conversation to figure out what do those outcomes really look like, and how will you know if you're successful? And it's not just it's not as simple as counting widgets or counting outputs. And so I appreciate taking that harder look. So with that, I will open the floor to public comment on this item. I do see that one member of the public has posted a few comments in the Q&A, and I would invite you, Judy, to raise your hand and speak live if you'd like to share those comments with the board, just so that they are included in the record, or if any other member of the public would like to comment, now's the time to raise your hand, and moderator Jones will unmute you so that you can address the board.
All right, it does look like we have a hand up from Cynthia Matthews. If you would please identify yourself, first and last name, and your time will start as soon as you unmute. You'll have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This is Cynthia Matthews. Hello, friends. This is so exciting. And I appreciate all the comments that have been made. I think we're at such a threshold now, another big growth opportunity for the system. I think you all know the direction, hopeful direction we're looking at now, finishing off the physical facilities. And this just starts to set the path for really meaningful adaptation to change and growth over time and collaboration. It's so exciting. I'd just like to know when we public will have access to this. I'd really like to go over it in detail. And I think the people that have worked so hard in all the branches in supporting funding and the private fundraising to make all these branches happen, they're so gorgeous. And it feels like another level, a point for the system to take off and be even more meaningful to the community. So that's my question. It's so exciting. And how do we public get involved from this point forward? Thanks.
Are there any other public comments?
Chair Legault, there are no other hands up, although Judy Gunstra has requested that I read her comments. Shall I proceed?
Yeah, you can read them quickly.
All right. The first comment from Judy Gunstra reads, item 9C. Nice sounding goals, but I wonder if level of staffing can accomplish all this. Measurement of success is important, but some of the goals are rather vague. Empathy, de-escalation, etc. That ends the first comment. Second comment from Judy Gunstra reads, 9C, please remember that we look to libraries for information and sharing resources related to lifelong education and literacy, not social services, mental health care that other agencies provide. Please don't expect librarians to administer drug overdose drugs, etc. That ends the second comment. Third comment from Judy Gunstra reads 9C. I agree with what Mr. Goldstein said about staff time spent measuring. That ends the third comment. And then the final comment from Judy Gunstra reads, please read my comment. I believe that ends public comment.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Any further discussion on the strategic plan from the board or staff? Well, thank you so much for all of your hard work on this. And what an accomplishment to be at this place where you have a document, you have a plan, and you can just continue to fine tune that, you know, on the path to finalizing it. So with that, I think we're just providing feedback and accepting this report. And let me jump back up to the main part of our agenda. Yeah, we're just reviewing and providing input on the draft strategic plan. So if there's no other discussion on that item, then the next item is a presentation by Gregory Yee, People Counter. And I believe this is also related to item E. Dr. Wilburn, do you want to kick us off, or are we going to jump right into Mr. Yee's presentation?
Correct. We will go ahead and let Gregory begin. Gregory is our new management analyst here at Santa Cruz Public Libraries. Gregory, I'll let you go ahead and kick this off. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you, board members. I am going to share my screen right now. I have a short presentation about the Sensource people counter. Give me a few seconds. Let me see if. So this is my presentation. I'm going to give the board members and the members of the public a quick overview of the Sensource people counter. My name is Gregory. I'm the new management analyst. I recently started in August, and I have been in charge as one of the administrators of the Sensource people counter. And today I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the entire system. So the background of the people counter, I see a lot of benefits to this new people counter system. There's basically three main points I wanted to point out. before I started, I actually skimmed through the board packet. The data of people counting in the past wasn't that great, in my opinion. But with this new system, the data quality really improves. We can monitor real time of the branch levels of how many patrons actually entered the branch. And that's one of the benefits of this new system. It also addresses community need where we know how many people or the average number of people enter it at each single branch. And lastly, the last benefit would be the staff scheduling and safety aspect of it, where if we know if a branch is overcrowding at a certain time, we can address that too as well. So I think the next question is, how does this system work? I think San Francisco Public Library, they actually supplied a surveillance impact report on this system. I think they did a pretty good job of explaining it. So they really went to 3 different points of how the system really works. So as you can see, it's a proprietary system where they go through 3 different steps. The first one, as you can see on your left-hand side, where it's the picture without the bubbles, the circle, that's the first step where the sensor sees the person. It's really hard to tell, but that's actually a person, a black blob right there. They sense that thing. It goes to the second step where it's a heat map where they can tell if it's an actual human or if it's a pet or anything like that. If they sense it's an actual human, it measures the person, the height of that person. And it's, as you can tell on the first screenshot, it's pretty hard to tell the person to actually tell who that person is. So it's mounted on the ceiling where it basically creates a stereo height map. And it, once that count passes the green line, it counts as one person, and it's stored on a cloud-based server where it tallies the counts of counting that one person. So one of the most important points about this section here is that it can count multiple people going in and out. So if there's a group of 5 people, if this system will catch that 5 people, 5 people that's going in and out. And there's counts in and out for this entire system. Now, the next question would be where the sensors are located currently in the branches. There's only 7 branches that have the sensors: downtown, Capitola, Boulder Creek, Felton, Scotts Valley, Garfield Park, and Live Oak as well. The branches without the sensors, of course, Pansafforti and Aptos, for obvious reasons that they're not open yet. And La Selva is, it's part of a it's a grant funded project that we're currently working on rewiring the system there. So it should come online after the whole system is being rewired. Now, the next question is the available data. So we actually, if you saw on the how it works, that slide, we actually don't have, the library actually does not have the access to the sensor data. So we can't actually have access to the sensor system where you saw the 3 pictures that San Francisco Impact Surveillance Report have. We don't have access to that. The only things that we have access to are specific locations, the tally count data, where we can limit it down to specific locations, particular sensors, and just an overall library system. There's several reporting features of this cloud-based servers that we have access to. So we can create a dashboard, a heat map, day and hour heat map, and also a data map. And at this point in the presentation, I'm actually going to take you to the actual tally server, the data that we actually have. So I'm going to switch my screen to the actual system so everyone can see the actual system. So
while Gregory, while you're setting that up, I will just chime in here to just reiterate what Greg pointed out. We do not photograph people. So the system does not photograph people when they walk in. It's really counting that someone came in, and we are not using those photos or that data in any other way. I just want to make that clear, because sometimes people might think that it's taking their photograph, and that is not at all what this software does.
And I just want to add on to that point as well. It's actually mounted on the ceiling, so it's not directly looking at someone's face. So it's mounted on the ceiling in all of our branches right now. So to continue with this short presentation, this is the actual data sets or the actual website that administrators, three of us, we have 3 administrators in our system right now. It's me, the IT manager, and also the principal management analyst has access to the system. And this is what they can see on the entire system, the tally count. So I actually, for myself, I created 4 dashboards, but there's a lot of different templates that administrators and also users can create on their own of how they want to see the data. So I created myself 4. So as you can see on this screen, this is the overall branch stats daily totals, and branches right now are open. So this screen is live. If branches are closed, this screen will say 0, 0. So right now, for example, in all the 7 branches, 59 people went in and 26 people left our branches. The next dashboard that I created myself is today's daily counts versus the previous week daily counts of the same day. So today, as you can see on this here, downtown, for example, has 23 people that actually went in. And last week on the same day, 757 people went into downtown. And you can see Live Oak, Scotts Valley, Garfield Park, Boulder Creek here, Felton, and also Capitola as well here.
And I will just add that we've been open about 15 minutes. So these are the people who have walked in the door in the last 15 minutes. Thanks, Greg.
Yes. For myself, I also put yesterday's total. So this also gives you an accurate count of what yesterday the traffic total ins were like. So Scotts Valley, for example, there were 200 people that actually went in, but the previous week on the same day last week is 194. So it's a plus 3.1% here. And you can tell this is something that's that a user or administrator can create. And I also wanted to point out that this is excluding closed hours. So sometimes if a staff member hangs out in the front door, like right next to the sensor during closed hours, that would not count. So I can exclude closed hours, and administrators, the 3 of us, has access to create the schedule as well. The last dashboard I created myself is more for myself, the week today versus last week's data. So as you can tell here, the graph, this is for today, for Thursday, and you can tell the stats there. So the next 4 information, the data views that you can see in the system is data map. I think this is more important for in terms of management wise for our managers to know how many the overall branch data. So here, a administrator or a manager who has access to all the data can exclude closed hours, click refresh, and they have access to data that's here for today. So if they click on, for example, Capitola, 11 people when it actually came out, and also 10 people in ins and outs, which I guess isn't exactly matching up. There might be data, there's errors that's happened with the system, but you can tell that's the traffic's in and out. The next data map I think is more useful in terms of staff scheduling is the day and hour heat map. I'm going to do a quick example of 6 weeks. In the prior 6 weeks, I'm going to choose Capitola. And if a manager of Capitola wanted to know the busiest times and dates of the past 6 weeks, they can use the day and hour heat map. And I want the traffic in. So in the number of patrons going into the branch, I want to exclude the closed hours, show the values of the averages of people that's going into Capitola, and click refresh. And you can tell this is one of the screens. I'm actually going to change it to green, yellow, red. That's more of what I'm used to looking at. So on the left-hand side here, it's Sunday, Monday through, actually Sunday through Saturday. On the top is the hours. So from 12 a.m., as you can tell, all this gray area, that's the closed hours. And all the way to the open hours, 10 a.m., all the way to 6 p.m. So 5 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. that it counts as that 1 hour. This red, as you can tell on the bottom here, that's the most busiest, the average time where there's an increase of traffic. And if a manager wants to find out, hey, like what happened on a Tuesday at 3 p.m., the manager at Capitol can call me and say, like, I need to find out why at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, there was an increase of traffic. And I would go in and analyze, hey, and find out from them of what event was taking on at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. It might have been just school letting out and more children actually entered into the branch as well. It could be like that. So this data is pretty powerful that where a manager can use it to find out problems and staffing levels of where to address that issue as well.
And I will just add here, I believe that on this particular Tuesday, there was a after-school program. And so that just shows that when we do programming, our numbers go up. People will come into our branches and attend those programs. And that's a way that we can determine we need more staffing during that time, or, you know, we need less staffing during a particular time.
And two more different ways of looking at the data. This is the heat map. And this is another way to display the data, similar data. I'm going to use downtown. And I'm going to quickly show you how it looks. And today's data, I'm actually going to use week to day. And I'm going to go by day, exclude close hours, and quickly show you how this works. So as you can tell, Sunday, it's average traffic, but Monday and Tuesday of this past week, it was pretty busy in downtown. Wednesday, yesterday was in the 700, the average 755 people went into the branch. And right now, in terms of real time, 34 people. So this is another way of displaying the data where I think it's also useful in terms of looking at looking at the average number of patrons going into the branch by day. The last one is a data grid. This is more of my expertise, I guess. You can set the data grid by traffic. And at the end of this, you actually can export this data into Excel, where for me, for example, as an analyst, I can go in and manipulate the data and present the data to Elon and also other managers as well. So I'm going to quickly show you how this actually works by location. And I can exclude closed hours here to get more accurate data. And there's a little button on the top right-hand corner where I can export, save, and export it to Excel. So I hope that was helpful. I'm going to quickly go back to my presentation, PowerPoint presentation, and finish out the presentation. So these are just screenshots of what you just saw in the system. And this is the dashboard side. This is a data map where someone, administrator or a manager, has access to all this data. They can tell where Boulder Creek is, the data for today, and also any day. They can have a map access or map view. This is the day and hour heat map, what you just saw in the system, and the heat map. And with that, I'll open up to any questions.
Great, thank you, Gregory. And very interesting presentation. Are there any questions to start us off from our board members?
I'm sorry. I'll just say that it was very interesting to look at the data and how many people are going into each of the branches and what time of day and so forth. I thought that was just fascinating. So interesting. Thank you.
And Director Goldstein.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's really interesting stuff. I think actually having some concrete numbers for our branches is going to be really informative for us as we kind of move ahead and grow the JPA over time. It's hard for me not to ask for like special data requests right now because I have all these questions and ideas, but I don't think that's probably the best use of everybody's time. So Gregory, I may follow up with you just because I think it is such interesting information, and really commend everybody on this interesting project. Oh, I guess there is one question is do you have any plans to make any of the information available to the public in any way? Is there any kind of web interface we could put in place? Just a question, just a thought.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that question. Absolutely, that is definitely something that we know that our friends at the library are very interested in this data. And so being able to share that at this time, what we're looking at doing, as you'll see in your next item, is that we'll be providing quarterly reports to the board with that information. We're happy to take direction from this board as to how you'd like to see that. If you'd like to see that as a comparison by each location to show kind of what are the busiest days by location, or if you'd like to see kind of a general report listing all of the branches over the month and what their daily counts were. We certainly could look at setting this up as a dashboard to make this information public, so that anyone could maybe access that to see kind of, hey, what are the busy times of day? That's certainly something that we could work on doing.
I think a dashboard could be a useful tool, provided there was a reasonable way to interface our data with the web. Obviously, up to staff's discretion, I think, about how much time and resources, but I think it could be a useful tool for people to just sort of see, hey, here's what's happening in my local library, and maybe the best time to go if I want it to be quiet is, 11 a.m. In terms of a report to the board, I think I'd be really curious to just sort of see the numbers kind of for the previous quarter and then the prior year by branch. That kind of thing, I think, would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Director Goldstein's sort of initial, request of how that data might be presented to the board quarterly, as well as just any analysis that staff finds interesting, like something unusual happened here, or we did this program and that, had this extra impact. So I think that, there may be some interesting points that would help inform future board and staff work that would be helpful to call out in that quarterly report, as well as sort of the general statistics.
Thank you.
Any other comments from board members?
Chair, I'll just add that as a data nerd, really appreciate the robust data set. It's something that I know the board has been talking about for quite some time, is wanting to have some clear metrics that we can track across all of the branches. And even as we refresh our cost sharing agreements down the road, I think this is another layer that could help inform those discussions as we go forward. And also just, again, having a clearer view of how many folks we're serving on a quarterly and annual basis. So appreciate the work on it. Thank you.
Okay, are there any members of the public that would wish to comment on this item? You can raise your hand.
Chair Legault, I do not see any public comment.
Okay, thank you. Well, we will close public comment and move on to item E, which is the Sensource's People's Counting Statistics first quarter fiscal year 23. Accepting that report is this agenda item, and I think that is exactly what Director Wilburn and Gregory were just pointing out as far as the first quarterly report on this data. So do you have more you'd like to say about that, Director Wilburn?
No, I think you've covered it sufficiently. Just that these first quarter statistics are partial. As Greg pointed out, we just recently got these installed. We're still working on installing the Sensource people counters at the La Selva Beach branch. We have written for a grant to cover the broadband infrastructure that we need to build into that location in order to install this. So hopefully we'll hear from that we've received that grant by the end of this month. And then we can proceed with that work. Once that is done, then La Selva Beach will be brought on board. Branciforte is set up to be able to go. So while it's under construction, we're working on putting them in there. So when it opens, we should be in position and ready to go with that location, and the same for Aptos when it does open. We will not be planning on placing the Sensource people counters at the Live Oak Annex, just so you know, because that is shared, has a shared entrance. We wouldn't be able to specifically say that anyone walking through the door is a library specific patron. So with that exception, those are the kind of branch reports that you would be getting quarterly. And we're happy to adjust it, as we said, with whatever is going to be most beneficial and useful for the board.
Thank you. Are there any questions from board members?
All right, this is just too much catnip for me. I can't help but make a little bit of comment and kind of a question. So when I'm looking at the report, I'm seeing the Capitola and downtown look to be pretty similar in terms of people counter over this month of October. But then in the most recent couple days data that Gregory you showed us during the presentation, it looked like Maine was significantly higher. I'm curious if that's something potentially related to the rain, that usage goes up at Maine. Anyway, those are the kinds of like interesting questions that I would be really curious about that maybe wouldn't fit into a standard format. But if you guys see that kind of thing, I'd be curious to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. And sometimes it is the rain, right? Sometimes people who are downtown, they might go into the library because and we know that that's what our libraries do sometimes. We serve as heating shelters, we serve as cooling shelters during the day, and that is part of what we do. And so I think that's where having these people counters in place can really help inform how we're providing services, the hours that we're providing services, and how many staff we need on hand in order to provide adequate coverage.
Great, thank you.
And I will point out that in the report that we have, so there was the period of the strike in here. So you'll see there are a couple of days where there's no statistics because Capitola was open. But every Felton and Scotts Valley and Capitola were open during that period. However, the other branches were not. And so again, that's all relevant data. So when the other branches are closed, do people go over to Capitola? And down the road, I think we'll be able to see when Aptos opens, right? I'm sure that right now Capitola is getting a large crowd of people that are coming from the Aptos area to use the library. And so when Aptos opens, is that going to shift the number of people that are coming into Capitola, or are people still going to continue to come into Capitola? So all of that will be really great information that we'll be able to glean by having these people counters in place.
Great. Any other questions or comments from board members? All right. Are there any public comments on the first quarter report that was provided in the packet?
Chair Legault, I see no public comment.
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment, and the staff recommendation is to accept and file the Sensource's people counting statistics for first quarter of fiscal year 2023. And I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion by Director Palacio, second by Goldstein. And can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Goldstein. Director Hoffaker.
Aye.
Director Palacios.
Yes.
Chair Legault.
Yes. So that motion carries unanimously. And our last item of regular business is the staff benefits percentage, which is an information only item as a follow-up to a previous question from a board member. So Director Wilburn, would you like to walk us through that?
Thank you, Chair Legault. At our previous board meeting in August, we had a question from, I believe, Director Palacios with regard to what the benefit delta is when we're hiring staff. And so I did go back just to verify and make sure we were putting in accurate totals. which we are doing. When the city calculates for budget purposes, they base it on each individual employee. And that's because different people have different years of service, there are different retirement benefits, those types of things. So those are all calculated based on the individual. However, as a general factor, what we use when we are applying a benefit ratio for our SEIU employees is 68%, supervisory 57%, mid-management 49%, and executives 42% is that factor that we're using as an average. Again, when we do our budget, that is done by the individual employees.
Okay, thank you, Director Wilburn. Are there any questions or comments from board members on that follow-up information? All right, is there any comment from the public regarding that item?
Chair Legault, I do not see any public comment.
All right, thank you. So next we'll move on to comments by board members. Does anyone have comments from the board? And our, excuse me, our next scheduled upcoming meetings, again, similar to the Library Facility Financing Authority, our next meeting will be February 2nd at 9 a.m. on Zoom, our last Zoom meeting before we go back to in-person meetings as described in the schedule that we earlier approved. So with that, I think we are ready to adjourn, unless there's any other comments. All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.